Hello, everyone. This is working. Right, I'd really like to get started for this really important session that we're having now. We're looking at redesigning higher education for the fourth industrial revolution, the ASEAN experience. And I just want to say a few words to begin. I want to tell you how the session's going to be laid out. And then I want to I'll introduce all of our panelists and then hand over to them to speak. And we have a very distinguished lineup of panelists today. I'm President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Nottingham, and this subject is very close to my heart for a number of reasons. First of all, as many of you in the room will know, the University of Nottingham has a campus here in Malaysia. And our campus is the oldest overseas campus of any university in the world. It was formed in 2000. And we have a very long-standing relationship with Malaysia. And we are, through that relationship, in having many other relationships in the ASEAN region. I also feel that this subject is close to my heart because I'm personally a specialist on the first industrial revolution of the 18th century. And what I know about that is that it was not only about technology, it was not only about new discovery, but it was also about the way people live, how knowledge is organized. It was about how skills were developed to relate and adapt to a changing world, and how we live in our societies. And I think the fourth industrial revolution that we're in now is about exactly those things as well. And that's why higher education is such an important element for us to be thinking about as our world changes so rapidly around us. I also would think that this is a very important panel for another reason. In the UK, our universities, we've had universities for 1,000 years in the UK, and that comes with advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages are we have very high quality education. We have centuries of capability that have been built up over a long period of time. But equally, we can be rather stuck in our cultures. We can be rather stuck in the past. And I think one advantage that we might see here on the panel today in the ASEAN region is newer universities, younger universities, and universities that will be able to be more innovative and adaptable than perhaps we're finding our universities are able to in the UK. So I think we will all be really interested to hear from our distinguished guests today about what the plans are for this in this region. So I'm going to introduce all of our panelists. First of all, I want to introduce His Excellency Phonthep Arthur Kaifavati, who is the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for Socio-Cultural Community. Prior to this appointment, he was assigned as Director, International Affairs Division, and Office of the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Justice of Thailand. And His Excellency is going to speak for 15 minutes and lay out the framework for our thinking about this subject. Our second speaker is His Excellency Tirakiat, Dr. Tirakiat, who is the Minister of Education in the Ministry of Education in Thailand. Prior to this, he was the Deputy Minister of Education in the Ministry of Education at Thailand, and before that, the Vice Minister for Education. We've had a substitute for our third speaker today. Unfortunately, Tan Sri Dr. Nirul Ainur was unable to be here. And we have instead Datu Kamal bin Mohammed, who is the Deputy Secretary General and the Chief Information Officer of the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. And our final speaker is Dr. Kai Maya, who is the Director General of Basic Education and Director General of Alternative Education for the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. So the first speaker will speak for 15 minutes, and the next three speakers will give 5-minute, very short presentations to lay the scene out for you. And when we've finished, I'm going to open it up to this wonderful, amazing, large audience for your questions. So thank you. So first of all, I hand over to His Excellency Fontep Arthur Kai Fafate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cheryl West, for that introduction. And I am good morning to all of you, and I'm pleased to be here to speak with you in this panel. The topic of what I'm going to be talking about is redesigning higher education for 4.0 industrial revolution, the ASEAN experience. I have been requested to go first, and so basically we'll just go through some of the important developments regarding the industry 4.0 and what has been going on in terms of the developments within ASEAN and possibly the way forward, going from this point of view. But first of all, let me just share with you, the idea of this, the industry 4.0. I really do not want to attempt to go in so much details now, because I have to tell you, yesterday during the opening of Going Global conference, we had such a wonderful presentation from Miss Aisha, talking about the disruptive technology, artificial intelligence, which I thought that was, absolutely fantastic. But just to contextualize, the way this thing's going to go. Of course, we're talking about the modern trend of automation, highly computerized and manufactured technologies. How we are introducing robots into the kind of things that we do, factory manufacturing, and something that features the use of internetworking that enables objects to collect and exchange data automatically. It's like basically a human brain that is able to operate. But it started with the manufacturing and smart factory. So this is what has been going on, and then it becomes we started to generate questions. Well, to the extent that this is going to replace some of the human resource requirement, but it's not just about computerization. It is also about the ability of different computers and machines to communicate to each other and do complex tasks together. So we're talking about development at another level. And I think that what we heard yesterday during the presentation pretty much gave us an insight into to this phenomenon. If we're looking at this from the point of view of the industrial revolution, we can generally say that this is a sort of a fourth phase of the industrial revolution. But what are the implications and impact to the economy, to the society, human capital, education, higher education? So this is where we are. Certainly, the reality and the impact of the Industry 4.0 will result in a certain branding of the production in the world. We often call the digital economy. The kind of economic activity that result from billions of everyday online connections, among people, businesses, devices, and data processes. This revolution, the 4.0, has profound impact in the production and manufacturing for the economy in general, but it has also altered significantly the way businesses operate. The phenomenon, and that is what we often refer to as the disruptive technology, which pertains to the impact of this Industry 4.0, because it disrupts the way we normally do things, in the economy, and the way we communicate with one another. So if the production cycle is altered by the Industry 4.0, then the question becomes: is our human resource able to cope with this, and to be prepared to cope with, and how are we going to deal with the the kind of skills for our workforce. The evident problem in the near future could not be just the lack of the employment, but the shortage of skills that the new jobs will demand. Okay, so this is, in general, the question for ASEAN, of course, this is certainly something that each country will have to be thinking about. But from the point of view of looking at ASEAN as a whole, how is ASEAN responding to this development? I'm just going to give you a background related to ASEAN. We have three different communities within ASEAN, but I want to bring to your attention two of them. The Economic Blueprint 2025, which basically guides the way in which we built the community here. We'll talk a lot about strengthening intellectual property partnership, productivity-driven growth, innovation, research and development, and technology commercialization, information, communication technology. Science technology is key. Consumer protection, global megatrends, emerging trade-related issues, and e-commerce. So these are issues that are pertinent on the economic side. Where the socio-cultural community is concerned, the blueprint, we talk a lot about education sector because we recognize the linkage between this sector and the economic one. Certainly, we pay attention to strengthening curricular and system of education in science and technology and creative disciplines. Encourages freedom of universal access to information and communication technology in accordance with national legislations. Encourage institutional and technical innovations in the provision of social services and healthcare. Enhance capacity, technology, and community resilience to the impact of unexplored ordnance and on the livelihood of people, especially vulnerable groups in rural areas. So these are some of the activities that within the framework of the blueprint, which gives us the future direction of ASEAN. But ASEAN is also acutely aware of the emergence of this mega trend. I can share with you that the 32nd High-Level Task Force on Economic Integration, they had a meeting last year, recommended to the ministers, the economic minister, to consider a study to be undertaken on the preparedness or readiness of ASEAN member states in addressing the challenges of the Industry 4.0 while seizing the opportunities brought about by it. The high-level task force agreed that such an assessment would allow ASEAN to have a better understanding of the region's capacity for Industry 4.0 before corresponding follow-up actions could be considered. So that the set of recommendations have been conveyed and adopted by the 49th ASEAN economic ministers last year in September. Well, in addition to that, I also would like to mention that this year, under the chairmanship of Singapore, chairmanship of ASEAN in 2018, the theme under the Singapore chair is resilient and innovative ASEAN, which includes a thrust to promote innovation and e-commerce with 3 targeted deliverables, namely the ASEAN Agreement on E-commerce, the Digital Integration Framework, and the establishment of the ASEAN Innovation Network. So this is something that we can look forward to under the current year of ASEAN. But where this relates to the education sector of ASEAN, I would like to share with you something about the ASEAN Work Plan on Education 2016-2020, which includes relevant priorities such as strengthening the use of ICT, for example, through expanding the ASEAN Cyber University, which allows an online platform for higher education, for the advancing ASEAN studies program and courses at higher education level through online and cross-border mobility. And third, preparing ICT-ready teachers through the enhancement of teachers' competency to address specific needs of vulnerable groups. These three phases of activities aim to achieve an overarching goal of using ICT effectively for teaching and learning. Okay. So next, I would just like to mention briefly, some of the things that have been happening within the ASEAN member states, in individual ASEAN member states. For example, in Brunei, Darussalam, we talk about Vision 2035. It's geared toward a smart society and improved quality of life, the theme that can create the way forward for Brunei and ASEAN countries to achieve a sustainable growth that is based on human capital, new technology, and smart innovation. Indonesia is, for example, introducing Making Indonesia 4.0, enhancing the workforce skill to address the digital technology. Philippines, groundwork in its recognition to develop the changing skills needs, also following up this trend. Singapore, as I mentioned before, now as regards higher education reform, Singapore focuses on experience learning, promotion of digital literacy, diversifying higher education pathways, encouraging lifelong learning, and broadening the role of universities. Vietnam also issued directive in this regard. I leave Thailand and Malaysia to my distinguished colleagues to share further thoughts. So as you can see that we have a global phenomenon here, and it is important for the countries in the region to really keep pace with all of this. And I think that this is clear that individual countries as well as the region are becoming much more aware. So we're going to think about what are some of the ways forward for us to be ready. First, we're going to have to think about the right balance between targeted reform to support Industry 4.0 ready education. What do we have the means to do it? These are some of the questions. Do we have to? How about the digital divide, especially when affecting those that have no access to technology? Because even within ASEAN, we also have the concern about development gap. Second point is about cross-sectoral coordination of efforts. The involvement of all stakeholders, including the private sector. Third, opportunity for a regional approach and the role of ASEAN Secretariat to support individual member states in terms of information sharing. How about organizing policy dialogues and targeted support for certain needs of ASEAN member states? Which brings me to my last point, my last slide here. What about the ASEAN higher education getting prepared for Industry 4.0? And ASEAN higher education 4.0, I would like to coin it that way, is the kind of higher education agenda that triggers transformation of mindset, meaning that whatever we do from now on in terms of curriculum design, the pre-service teachers training, internship scheme, will also have to take into consideration these global developments. In the age of artificial intelligence, specific human skill will still be important than ever. And you may think that there are a number of areas in which humans are replaced by robots, but things like judgment, common sense, cultural appreciation, intercultural skills, which are going to be very important for socio-cultural integration of this region. I think more than ever we still have to pay attention to human skills. And last but not least is the set of ingredients that would enable ASEAN education to take off, or whether we're talking about the student mobility program, the quality assurance, credit transfer, research and networking. But all of this, looking at how we can be responsive to and leverage from the benefits of the Industry 4.0. Ladies and gentlemen, this is pretty much what I have here in terms of the introduction, in terms of the Industry 4.0 higher education in ASEAN. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that excellent introduction, and I'll turn to Dr. Tirakiat now.
Dear friends and colleagues, number one, it's very hard to, I find it quite challenging to capture my thoughts in 5 minutes. But I'm going to try using my perspectives of being a vice minister and then deputy minister and then minister of education. So I must have done something right, that I got promotion every year. So anyhow, number one, I think we have to remember that we are in this sort of conferences or similar for many, many times. And the country cannot be run by slogan, rhetoric, or campaigns, or some beautiful words. So the title is Redesigning. So I want to qualify it by what I have observed, that it's education reform, or you want to call it redesign, cannot be created. It actually evolves. It's very hard to redesign something. So I would call it's kind of natural redesign. If only the policies maker made the ecosystem for things to, if you like, develop and evolve and prosper, I think that I see my job as minister fulfilled. So my thinking about particular asking the higher education institutions to reform themselves is, we have tried in Thailand using so many words: reprofiling, redesigning, reforming, but nothing of substance has happened. I find that, I think we have kind of be sucked into what we would call halo effect. We are mistaken with our own internal bias that if a professor is teaching in a big university, he must have known that the world is under threat. The world is facing Industry 4.0. So we appoint a professor to lead the change, only to find that you lose a good professor and get a bad leader in his place. And I think this is true, and this happens in so many commissions in Thailand. And the other point I want to make is, we have to abandon central planning for redesigning. I have tried that, it hasn't worked. We have tried that probably centuries. We must remember what Adam Smith has said, that central planning, no one is going to know, particular Industry 4.0 is so disruptive, it's so fast, and no big brother, even the most intelligent, the most scholastics, gurus or anybody can know what is going to change. So, for instance, in Thailand, all along we want to welcome overseas institutions. It has never been successful until about May last year. I went to the Prime Minister, I said, Prime Minister, we need a new law to invite foreign institutions. And he said, what? I said, the new laws only require 2 items in the law. Number one, anyone who wants to come can be exempted from higher education commission standards and rules and regulations. He said, okay. Number 2, it will be exempted from private university laws. Since then, we have had the first Carnegie Mellon campus in Thailand, and we're going to have National Taiwan University to establish campus. That's number 1. Now, the other thing we try and was approved by the cabinet lately is that we have been telling the universities, higher education institutions, please prepare our students for Industry 4.0. For at least a couple of years, in this government had the Thailand 4.0 policy. Nobody actually has produced. Until 2 months ago, with the new Deputy Prime Minister, I said, look, any university who want to join by redesigning your curriculum, I will fund according to the number of students. Because they changed track in the last year. For instance, Thailand needs rail engineering. And suddenly in 2 months, 20 universities joined, and then the cabinet just approved a new budget to change basically the current students into the new industry-based curriculum. In the next 10 years, we have 100,000 more. And we leave those who do not change alone. So central planning is bad. And the last thing I want to point out, I have 1 minute, is we have to remember the history. Thailand hasn't been, we talk about Industry 4.0. What is the history of Thailand industry? We haven't had metal, heavy manufacturing industry. Do we want to produce cars? Yes, we do. But we end up being laborers, producing, supplying laborers. So we have to really identify what sort of industries. And don't forget that all the redesigning reform must be concrete and do not remain abstract, like words that we hear all the time: cooperation, collaboration, coordination, all this sort of Industry 4.0. But we have to really identify the sectors that we are going to move forward. That is a strength of Thailand, not a generic one. There'll be more if you come to listen to me, because I'm speaking in the next session as well, in the plenary. There will about 5 minutes, but that would be enough. Thank you very much.
That was excellent. Thank you. That was a tightly packed 5 minutes. There's a lot to talk about there. Thank you. So now we're on to Datu Kamil. Next.
I need to.
You have some slides.
Yeah, I need to refer to a slide. Thank you very much, and very good morning. I'm given 5 minutes, although I know that our attention span is about 8 seconds, and goldfish is about 12 seconds, I think. So I hope you have more than that. Okay, I don't need to elaborate on this one. How we have evolved from Industry 1.0 to 4.0. But basically, in a layman term, I would like to borrow the word from Thomas Friedman. When we're talking about Industry 4.0, not only average is over, but average is officially over. Okay? So if you are an employer, we have to tell our employer why we should get promoted, why we should get hired. Average is officially over. Now, if we're talking about the impact of and challenges of fourth IR, and also I think every one of us have this book. So that's why most of my presentation will be based on this one. I will just highlight a few points and leave some maybe during the Q&A. It has brought impact to economy, business, society, government, and also higher education. We are talking about economy, how higher education. We are talking about talent, how company hire the talent now. Last time company they will hire talent because they would like to hire. But then right now, they will only hire talent if they have to. Not because they want to. Only if they have to. Okay? Society, it brings challenges. How do you strike a balance between the need for security and also the privacy? Yeah? These are some of the issues we need to balance. Government, it's good. There's a digital platform and whatnot. Community become more engaged, But the danger when we talk about industrial revolution, the IT era is most of us are communicating. We communicate, but sometimes we don't engage. It's two different things, If you want to create impact, you have to engage. When I shake hands with somebody, I communicate, but unless I talk with him, having 1 to 2 seconds chit-chat, how are you, then only will create impact. That's what we call. So two different things between communicating and engaging. Talk about higher education, I'll tell you how it has impacted us. Yeah? Basically, we are talking about changing landscape of employment trends. Now the sexiest job now is data professional. That is the sexiest job in the market. We're also talking about changing landscape of technology. One of the things that I think that brought the most significant impact, again, if you you happen to listen to the presentation or read a book by Thomas Friedman, he was talking about the merger of globalization and the IT. That is basically how we can describe the fourth industrial revolution. Because with the IT revolution, we become more globalized, and with the globalization also, it will also drive more, getting to the higher level of IT revolution. Now, we are also dealing with digital native. These are some of the description. It's also in the book. We're talking about generation they are bored by traditional lecture in the classroom. That's why we are talking about learning without classroom. Yeah. But the problem, if you visit the IT companies, you visit the R&D lab, thing has changed. But if you go to the most of the lecture room right now, I'm not sure whether you can describe what has been the changes. But we are talking about the generation they are bored by traditional lecture in the classroom. Yeah, they are talking about online educational game, and literary reading has also gone down. Now we have also, for your information, we have launched this framework 4.0, humanizing higher education, because we realize that average is officially over, and also sometimes we talk so much. I hope our conference also does not end with just pure diagnostic. So many diagnoses being issued out there. But we need to do is, we need to act. If we borrow from Nike, do it. Enough of diagnostic. There's so many diagnoses out there. But we need to do, we need to act. So that's why in our framework, humanizing higher education, basically there are three pillars. One is future-ready curriculum, agile governance, talent planning, and research and innovation. I just like to touch on two things. This is also related to, again, we're talking about higher education 4.0. We're evolving from whereby under 1.0, we are mostly teacher-centered. But now you see the bottom right-hand corner, under higher education 4.0, the learning, teaching has been delivered differently. Yeah, we're talking about not only learning from your professor, but also learning from your peers. One more minute. We have done a lot on redesigning higher education, but I'd just like to touch on 2 points. It's like enabler. One is on the TVET. We realize, there's a lot we need to do on TVET, technical and vocational higher education training. What happened in TVET? First of all, some initiative. We have formed Malaysia Board of Technologies, so that we want to recognize technologists and technician is a profession by itself. Secondly, we have also merged Department of Polytechnic and Department of Community Colleges. Thirdly, we have rebranded TVET as a TVET Malaysia, because there are 9 or 10 ministries involved in delivering TVET. And also, another thing is, right now we are talking about promoting TVET. It's no longer as a second choice, no longer a second choice. It's just we want to make sure that empowerment of TVET. Secondly, when we talk about IT, we believe we're talking about smart classroom, digital technology, digital classroom. We have launched a very, what we call it, a game-changing initiative. This is where we form a consortium, whereby university come together, form a consortium. And right now, we're trying to provide the so-called internet connection in the university. We want to push up to we want to make sure we are 100 gigabits ready by 2019. We want to belong into the so-called gigabits club, so that with the 100 gigabits ready, we will be connected to the top-notch education and also research institute all over the world. We have slowly rolled out quite a number of universities now enjoying slowly from, they used to enjoy like 2-3 gigabits. Now they have moved into 10, and by 2019 they will be 100 gigabits ready. This is what we're talking about, the the two enablers that I would like to touch, because it's mentioned but briefly in the book. The rest, I think you can go through. There's a lot of information in here. Let me close with just one or two slides. I remember when at the last Going Global conference in London, there's a lot of workshop, all these things. One thing that stuck into my mind is the term town and gown. Town and gown, where universities and the community should work together, work closely. So that town and gown still stuck in my mind until today. Now, I've shown you, all the diagnoses, what we are doing, been there, done that. But I think we have to remind. Peter Drucker used to quote this: if we are not strong enough into a policy and our strategy, culture will eat strategies for breakfast. Not only that, culture will eat strategies for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and supper. Yeah? Why? Because we believe in order for higher education 4.0 to be successful, the whole ecosystem will have to work together in assuring that positive changes can truly happen. Yeah. So, because at the end of the day, we are talking about things has changed. Yeah. If you talk about, you still have 30 seconds? Okay, almost. With one word. Right now, even the way we are being hired, everybody it seems right now, will be subject to a lot of tests. Last time, only lawyers. They pass the law degree, they have to go to the bar-like test. But now, I think the present generation, every time they'll go for interview, every time they go for a new job, they will be put to a new test. So, I think we have to make sure that we have to train our graduates, we have to train our children, so that, and keep on reminding them that average is officially over, and they must be able to tell themselves why they should be hired, and we should be able to tell ourselves why we should be promoted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And finally, Dr. Kai.
Good morning, everybody. My slide is only one slide. So, at first, I would like to thank organizers for the opportunity to participate in this panel and for selecting this very interesting and important topic to discuss. To redesign higher education for Industry 4.0, my understanding is a sector-wide and multi-sector approach is required to enable and grow Industry 4.0. I would like to outline the approach taken by Ministry of Education Myanmar to support the government of Myanmar to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution. This approach involves 4 continuous phases, as shown in slides. The phase 1, foundation building phase, phase 2, building interdisciplinary institution, and phase 3, mainstreaming 21st century skills and digital technologies across the education sectors, and the phase 4, or final phase of interdisciplinary collaborations and partnerships among the public and private sectors. Once the phase starts, it continues for the long term. Phase 1, the foundation building phase. For the Ministry of Education, this has involved a 4-year comprehensive education sector review to develop evidence-based national education strategic plan for the 5-year from 2016 to 2021. This review highlighted the complexity of building a foundation for the fourth industrial revolution. This is because Industrial 4.0 requires many government ministries working effectively together, such as Ministry of Education, Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Transport and Communication, Ministry of Planning and Finance, and Myanmar Investment Commission. For the Myanmar government to establish and grow Industry 4.0, it must have a strong foundation of quality education, mainly to develop creative skill, innovative skill, and technological skill. This foundation phase also involves continuous analysis and tracking of international trends and research in education reforms in order to learn from the country that are further ahead than Myanmar in implementing Industry 4.0. We are now starting the third year of our strategic plan, and the ministry has achieved impressive results. And this has created opportunity for the ministry to start phase 2 of a built-in interdisciplinary institution. It will play a central role in the Industry 4.0. The ministry has successfully established an inclusive sector-wide coordination mechanism with the partner ministries, development partners, non-government, and private sector organizations for the first time in our education history. This coordination unit is called Education Sector, Tibet Sector Coordinating Committee, and British Council of Myanmar is very actively participating in this unit. And this very play the important role in coordinating among the various education stakeholders, providing support and seed funding to establish Industry 4.0 in Myanmar. Another important institution recently established only last week is a Redesigning Committee to represent all of the 178 higher education institutions in Myanmar. This very well autonomously played a central role in reforming the higher education subsector in order to participate in the grow 4.0 industry. The ministry is now preparing to start phase 3, mainstreaming 21st century skills and digital technologies across the education sector. This will be done through the innovative pilot programs, interdisciplinary researches, and taking lessons to scale. I want to highlight the importance of mainstreaming digital technologies only after building the strong foundation of quality education. Otherwise, there is a risk of technology-driven education reform, which has failed in many countries. The DFID-funded SPEAR program managed by the British Council is a good example of this and is reforming distant educations in Myanmar using technology. Under this phase, the ministry is researching establishing education and employment and tech hubs that will provide new high technology trainings and career guidance to Myanmar youths. Graduates from these hubs will be able to take up entry-level ICT jobs and access high-level development courses and digital technologies. The ministry is also exploring opportunity to establish a social entrepreneurship innovation fund to provide grants to the social entrepreneurship research and innovation centers located in our computers and technology university. The Ministry of Education must invest in research and innovation in our higher education institution for the long term. This will evolve to be continuously improved based on the lessons and outcomes from the innovation initiatives. The ministry can demonstrate results with the follow initiatives, and we will continue to the phase 4 of interdisciplinary collaborations and partnerships among the public and private sectors to develop and implement Industry 4.0. I would like to point out international collaborations and ASEAN partnership will be important in all phases. I hope Facebook can start in Myanmar in the late 2019. After completing the fourth phase, it is believed that we could have a prepared to participate in grow 4.0 industry and to have a readiness for the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you very much for considering these remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and I appreciate all the panelists sticking to time. I know that's very difficult when it's such a big topic. I'd like, rather than starting myself asking questions, although I've got some, this is such a big, wonderful audience. I think I'm going to look to you to start kicking off the questions, and I hope we'll get some. We've already got one in the back there. We've got a roving mic.
Hello.
Elsa Chambers from the University of Warwick. I'd just like to ask the panel, what can international universities do to work with the ASEAN region to help prepare and respond to Industrial Revolution 4.0? What can we best do to help?
Shall we start with Vongtep on that?
Yes, thank you. I think certainly the idea of enhancing collaboration among universities is not only within the region, but also between ASEAN region and the other universities in other countries as well. And I think that through the process of promoting student mobility, and I think that there is something that we could learn from collaboration with international universities. I understand that universities like perhaps in the case of UK University, it's not only students from ASEAN. We're not only talking about the exchange students from ASEAN to the UK, but I understand that UK university would also like to, vice versa, exchange with the countries in the region as well. So I think that from that point of view, we continue to enhance the partnership, and but this in itself is a learning process for both, and in that process, I hope that in terms of technology transfer, what we can learn, also from the UK university, how what kind of the things that have been put in place in order to get university industry 4.0 ready. So yeah.
Thank you. Can I also ask Dr. Tirakiat to respond to that? Because I know that you were talking about changes in relationships in Thailand to international universities.
No, I think it depends on your purpose of wanting to work with the universities in any country. I think you have to search and scan for opportunities to the countries that welcome the work with you. For instance, now Thailand, we now really welcome you, particularly in areas, I'm talking physical areas of the Eastern Economic Corridor, as well as the in general areas that you want to cooperate with. And we make the system for you that you're doing business is a lot easier for you to work with us. So come to Thailand. if you have something to offer.
We've got a question back over there, and then one up here.
Hello, David Norman, University of Western Australia in Perth. In Australia, we've got when we think about Fourth Industrial Revolution and higher education, the thing which taxes us is lifelong learning, how we reskill and we retrain people. So we expect that a large number of jobs will be affected by automation. There'll be new tasks which people need retraining for. Also, new jobs will be created. And so, clearly, a model which we currently have, where you do a bachelor's degree and later on you might do a master's degree and you might do a PhD, does not work if you're going to have 4 or 5 different careers over your lifetime. So I'm very interested to find out what the panelists think about how ASEAN countries can respond to the need for lifelong training, retraining, reskilling for new careers. Thank you.
Who'd like to start on that one? That's a good question. Lifelong learning?
If just quickly, lifelong learning is certainly part of the ASEAN education work plan priority. So I think that from that point of view, we certainly, we share your view on this, and this is something that ASEAN is promoting, among the member states. And what I said in the last point in my presentation is that how we leverage the existing ASEAN work plan on education in a way that would corresponds to the Industry 4.0. I think that, so from that point of view, this is something that we very much put a priority on.
Yes, Dato.
Thank you very much. In fact, when we're talking about lifelong learning, it's one of the key shifts in our higher education blueprint. And also, right now with the facilitated by the investment in technology, we are also promoting the massive online course, MOOCs. And we are talking about, through MOOCs, students in Malaysia can get education. In fact, not only in Malaysia, in all over the world, we can get even not only from Malaysia, but also can enroll in a course, maybe offered by top-notch universities, Western Australia or Harvard, Cambridge, at a discount. I mean, cost is very cheap compared you go and enroll by yourself. And also through MOOC, right now we are promoting as our online platform. Anybody can go, even those at the community colleges. MOOC is basically, it will be in future. We are strongly promoting MOOCs as a mode of delivery.
I think, Jim, you were next, and then one back there. Here first, and then back there.
Thank you very much, Jim Conroy, University of Glasgow, home of Adam Smith.
That's true.
One of the things that concerns me is that there's a great deal of talk of autonomous learning, of the student as learner, but if we look at lots of things that have happened across the globe in the last 4 or 5 years, they point to a population that doesn't know how to handle data, that cannot make judgments and discriminations between good information and bad information, good arguments and bad arguments. My concern is that with a rush to a technological fix, that we actually lose the core of university education, which is to cultivate judgment in young people. And the idea that all lectures are boring is simply wrong. There are some boring lectures. And I'd be interested in your response to those traditional forms of education.
Here's a good challenge for the panel. Who'd like to start on that one?
Can I?
Yes, please.
I think you're right, and I actually have said this so many times, that digital is different. There is a lot of talk about that now we have no need for teachers. Teachers are just good, have to be good facilitators. I think this is all wrong. The Google, the internet, cannot do things that teachers can do. For instance, they cannot love students. They cannot motivate students. They don't know what is important. They cannot assess well. You know, assessment requires a lot of judgment. So there are things that teachers should not worry about. The rushing in of the Industry 4.0 or anything. Robots are not humans. So I think we have to preserve this. And we have to be grounded that education is not just for living. It's also for life. There is a life that is worth living. Is there such a notion what a good life is that cannot be taught by machines? So I think we really need to ground our students well. So thank you for bringing this up.
Yes, thank you very much. We have a question back there and then one up here.
Thank you, Kamal from Cambridge Assessment in Singapore. I would like to comment firstly to Dr. Kamal for highlighting the TVET sector as being, it shouldn't be a second choice. It should be mainstream into the education system. And for that, I would like to ask the panel how ASEAN higher education sector has been responding to the TVET sector, bearing in mind that the TVET sector is actually very responsive and very nimble when it comes to Industrial Revolution 4.0. And of course, the other thing related to it in terms of alternative pathways, how our higher education systems in ASEAN have been very responsive to the international pathways as well. Thank you so much.
Where shall we start with that?
Maybe I just like a few points. When we formed the Malaysia Board of Technology, basically at the end of the day, we want to be the members of the Sydney Accord, which is the accord that administer the technologies. Yeah? So that what we are doing now will gain international recognition. So we are also working together in the context of ASEAN. This one is being driven by our Department of Polytechnic. So that's why I say the establishment and the passing out of the technologies and Technician Act. It's a game changer for us, but it's not an easy because it took us quite a number of years. Especially we have to go through the debate, especially debating with the engineers, board of engineers. Sometimes when you say engineering technologies, engineers or technologies, we went through that debate, but we passed through, yeah. And that's why we are working closely, because you are talking about in the context of ASEAN. There is a special working group. We are working together to push TVET agenda to the higher level.
Thank you. Phung Tep wants to...
Yes, thank you. Just to add to what Kamal just said, I think from the point of view of ASEAN, TVET is extremely important, and just to confirm with you, but it's not just the priority issue of the ASEAN education sector per se. We recognize that we have to look at this issue from the integrated point of view. We are working closely also with the labor sector and the economic sector. In fact, we are in the process of establishing the kind of a council within ASEAN now that incorporates the three sectors: economic, labor, and education, looking at how to further enhance our work on TVET. And I think that just one other point to add to that is, we have seen quite a proactive participation from the private sector now, after the launch of ASEAN Community, and the way we advancing the TVET agenda. Members of trade and industry and commerce, chamber of commerce, participating. Private sectors, companies, corporations are really engaging in this whole conversation with us, and be ready. And another thing that, but also we also have to promote the change of mindset. Because in a number of countries in ASEAN, there's always a recognition of the university degree being the ultimate prize for students. But in fact, that more and more, I think we also have to enhance our effort on the campaign to make people understand that it's okay for people in terms of the employability or being TVET trained. Yeah.
I think we had one around here somewhere. Then we have one back there, and then one there, and one up here. So. Yes, you first. Thank you. It's coming.
Okay, thank you for giving me the chance. I've got the question for Mr. Dato Kamal bin Mohammed. You mentioned in your lecture that you need 100 Gbps connectivity. You see, in 1985, I used to work in Cambridge with 96 BPS. So from there, we climbed up to now, Mbps is very common, and Gbps is not common to everywhere. Now, this 100 Gbps seems to be a tremendous speed. And I don't know, is it a standard set in Industrial Revolution 4? How did you fix this figure, 100 Gbps? And another question, do we really need that? Because in order to set up 100 Gbps for individuals in a university, you have to really spend a lot of money. So, how do you justify this high-speed connectivity? Is it really necessary? Could I make my point clear? 100 Gbps you mentioned, right? Connectivity. Internet connectivity, 100 Gbps, you mentioned in your lecture that is the necessity. Who fixed this figure? Is it a figure defined in the Industrial Revolution 4?
Okay, what I'm saying is the 100 gigabits ready. We are talking about the connection to the international and to the point at the gate of the university. But inside university, it will be through the incremental. It will divide based on the usage. What we're trying to say is we want to make sure, as far as connecting outside, we are 100 gigabits ready. Because sometimes we are talking about those who work in the genome field, for example. Yeah, we don't want to go into the position whereby suddenly you need to transfer the huge amount of data led by the highway. But the point that I'm trying to say here is we want to tell the academic and research community we launched this MyRAN Act. With the launching of MyRAN Act, we want to tell them that speed and connectivity is not an issue anymore.
Thank you. We've got several questions waiting. We've got one in the back there, one here, and one over here. So in the back first. No, sorry. There was a gentleman behind you who had his hand up earlier.
Thank you. I'm Nasir Fagé from Nigeria. I'm happy that private-public partnership is working in your country. We tried that in Nigeria, but what we noticed is that the private sector is highly parasitic and self-centered, and it didn't work. We tried it with student hostels, but it didn't work. There is a strategy of turning that around so that you can be able to effectively harness the benefit of private-public partnership.
Does anyone want to take that one on? Private-public partnerships?
Maybe I have to take it. In Malaysia, we are talking about industry and academia are one. We are talking about, we have special initiative, we call it public-private research network, whereby the university will sit down with the industry trying to resolve the problem. Yeah? We also have this in most of the polytechnic university. We have also industry and university consultative council. Yeah? So in our ecosystem, it's quite difficult because we work very closely. In fact, yesterday, I think Secretary General has mentioned about CEO at faculty, whereby we bring people from the industry to the university. They will have to commit to give a lecture. Not only they can become a role model for the future talent, but also, it's just a part of inculcation of the spirit of entrepreneurship. What we're trying to do is when the businessman, entrepreneur goes into the university, we want to make sure all our university students, university community, we want to change their black group into B positive. Not B positive, BE positive. I wish all the university in our university community that belong to the so-called one black group, B positive.
Thank you. And we had a question back here, one over here, and one final one in the, well, I think there's one in front of you. I'm sorry. We only got time for 3 more, I think.
Thank you. I do agree that the whole ecosystem have to work together. So we think about the redesigning of the higher education. Any initiative, any motivations, or any input from the industrial side that should be, rather than like a invited come to like a to be a lecturer, but any kind of like initiative from the industrial side to support our redesigning.
Thank you for that. I don't know if anybody wants. Do you want to make a comment, Dr. Tirkit?
The world of the industry often runs parallel to the world of education. They never meet. If you sit down and have a frank talk with industrialists, they will say that what we now produce do not match what they demand. And my first day when I was the Minister of Education, the head of TVET came to me and said, "Sir, we are short of 18,000 teachers. We need to retrain them, or train them." I said that would take another 500 years. There are teachers all around in the private sectors, and we need to change our mindset. Basically now in Thailand, what we are doing, we have what we call E2E, education to employment courses. The world is moving. That is ironic. We are talking about things that are changing, but the education usually the most rigid, or if you like, orthodox and conservative, and they need to be that way. I'm not saying we should. They need to be that way. So they cannot catch up with changes very easily. What we do is now the self-enhancement courses. If you ask the private sectors, they will all retrain our new graduates, and they don't mind. So why don't we get them early on? or when they just graduate, we have thousands of courses, so self-enhancement, short courses, and almost all guarantee work after that training, 1 or 2 months, and McKinsey is doing this, and in fact, it's backed up by research that 6 months training is actually not different from 3 years vocational training, so, or even 3 months training. So we really need to give up our sort of myths and beliefs and see the world.
Okay, we have 2 more questions, one here and one in the back over there.
I am Ramchandran from India. Really, you know, the government of Malaysia and their efforts from yesterday, Dr. Nurul, today Dr. Kamal, is really a mind-boggling and scintillating exercise that government of Malaysia is doing. But my question to the even panelists, and to particular to you, how the backward integration, we are talking about higher education 4.0, all in higher education, higher 4.0 for all higher education, degree and above. What about the backward integration in terms of maybe the polytechnic diploma program and artisan program, and then even schools and down the line? How the Malaysian government is really working towards that? This is my question to you.
Dato.
Okay, very briefly. First of all, Ministry of Higher Education and Ministry of Education used to be one, and now it's split up. But we're still working together because there is a joint committee between the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Higher Education. Specific question on the Polytechnic, college community, these two systems is under the Ministry of Higher Education. But we are working closely. We're working closely in such a way, if there is a forum whereby if there is anything that we cannot resolve, we will escalate to the higher forum. We realize because at the end of the day, there is this, we have to look at the whole value chain system from the primary education and after that to higher education. We are working closely, but of course there are some issues that still need to thresh out, in terms of recognition, and also how do we make sure to prepare them so that when they become not only graduate ready, but also those coming to university. We are talking about 2020, because by 2020, we have to be able to produce the graduate, they are ready for 2020. But we also have to make sure those who are enrolling in the higher Ministry of Education now, ready when they go to university. We are talking about, we want to make sure that universities will produce the graduate, they are industry ready. We also have to make sure that we have to start in the school also. That's why we work together. We talk about STEM, we work together, we work closely.
Thank you. Okay, there was one last question in the back there.
Mahmood Bhatt from Higher Education Commission, Pakistan. The question is not just for the panelists, the question is for the audience.
We've only got 5 minutes.
Only simple question. Is intelligence artificial? For higher education, we got to ask that question. What is higher about it? Will it produce robots, or will it produce people who will make judgments? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. I appreciate all the input of the audience, and especially the panelists for laying out such a fascinating topic. And I think what came out of this for me really is that we don't want to, as we say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we have to adapt, but there is a lot about our higher education system that we have to retain as well. And I think how we think about both of those things at the same time is a challenge for all of us. We've got 5 minutes, and I think I might just allow the panel just to have one final quick thought each on the basis of the discussions that we've just had. And I'm aware Dr. Kai has not been able to answer any questions. I don't know if you would like to make any final comments, and then I'll just go down the panel. So to you first, would you like to make any final remarks?
Yes. What I understand is to redesign higher education is a very important agenda for all. But building foundations of quality education is the most important I feel, because without quality education, creative skill, innovative skills, and any other technology skill, our preparation for food revolution, in industrial revolution cannot be successful. This is my remark.
Thank you. Dr. Kamal?
Just a few quick final points. First of all, I've shown you what we are doing is still work in progress. Still work in progress. A lot of things need to be done. Secondly, again, to remind, average is officially over. If you want to produce robot, you should not produce an average robot. It should be a better robot. Yeah. Thirdly, we're talking about the humanity, technology. That's why in our minister's annual address, the theme of Minister of Higher Education this year's address is 3. One is academic excellence. Secondly, industry. And thirdly is humanity. The 3 pillars. And finally, maybe I need to stress this. We have talking a lot, going through all this. But at the end of the day, the most important thing when we want to do something is don't ignore the role of communication. Whatever we are doing, we must have a very strong, very strategic communication strategy, because the most important thing nowadays is communication. We need to engage our stakeholder. It is okay if one day they come, they told us that, see, I told you, you don't believe, you still go ahead. But the worst thing is your stakeholder come and tell you, we are not consulted.
Thank you. Thank you. Phongtep?
I think Kamal just might take the word out of my mouth already about communication. No, but that's just, I agree with you. We cannot emphasize enough. But let me just put this from the perspective of the way ASEAN is looking at this. I would just like to emphasize the cross-sectoral coordination. The education, see, we have to look at this not only from the point of view of education, but education working in conjunction with other sector. Here in ASEAN, we also have the information sector that is looking after communication. We also have the economic sector that looks after industry. And I think that for education, higher education 4.0, this is not something that can only be advanced by the education sector alone. But communication in terms of outreach, to the extent that our population, particularly those who are in the rural areas, can really be on top of what has been going on and what's being discussed right now. Are they really part of this whole conversation? That is a key, But having said that, also reaching out to the industry. But then again, I keep thinking that we'll talk a lot about industry, but as if industry is the only thing that matters, in higher education. I mean, there are many other aspects of humanities, and arts that also are very important, And I think that somebody mentioned during the conversation, when we're talking about, I mean, we talk about artificial intelligence, but we also need to think about emotional intelligence, the cultural appreciation. And here it is something that quite relevant, within the context of ASEAN community building, is the thing called ASEAN identity. How are we going to move forward? Education is key, bringing the young people together, closer together, being able to appreciate one another's culture. This is something that I don't think that can be replaced by robots. Still, the good old-fashioned interface. But yes, I totally agree. Communication is going to be key.
Thank you, Dr. Tirikyat.
I think my last words would be, be happy. If you leave this room not having the right strategies or right answers, an approximate answer to the right question is better than a precise answer to the wrong question. So, therefore, be happy if you leave this room blissfully as ignorant as before you came in. I know you're trying to be helpful to your education system, but you know how can a 1.5 hour change things? You know, you get some ideas, let that sink in, and I think that will be enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, that was great. Thank you. Thank you, that was really good. Thank you so much. That was great. Great way to end as well. Thank you so much.